This guest has absorbed more abuse from me than any person on earth over the last 15 years. If you're not familiar with Steve Bick, who's sitting to my right, maybe you've never seen him, you've only heard of him. We're clapping because he's the man, right? I mean, nobody does more bringing horse racing to people's homes than Steve Bick, who's at the races, is on for 3 hours every day, 5 days a week during the week. You're the best, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, Steve has mystified our relationship. We met at Ciro's about 20 years ago, 18 years ago. But when did you start at the races? It wasn't your show at first. It was
Joe Gracie and his partner, and John Parada, who certainly many people would know. John had mounted the show, had connection to Sirius when it got started, and I got an out of the blue email in October maybe of 05 saying would I be interested in handicapping on the show, and it was from a guy that had been doing some handicapping but was moving from South Florida, and he recommended me, and you couldn't make up what transpired from that point. It just was this series of, some people might find it unfortunate events that landed me, on the roadway. Yes. And a couple of years later, JJ moved on, and 2007, it landed in my lap. John said, if you want to go on with it, go ahead. And that, it's 10 years ago.
And you put me on well before, about 2005 or 6. You would have me on as a guest, and that was a couple of years before I worked at NYRA, and I was doing nothing in racing. You're like one of my earliest supporters. Even Steve Nagler.
Wow.
My earliest supporters.
You've got it. He's got it completely backwards, because when absolutely no one knew what the show was, Andy would suggest certain topics and certain people, and then would go and advocate for them, call them with his extensive contacts around the game, including Andy and Steve Christ and so many more. And that, whatever success the show has,
you're too kind. That's not true, but you're too kind. That show is, as a friend of mine who produced it at one of the networks said to me, Steve Bick gets guests before I could get them. Everybody comes on, everybody likes you. I don't know why.
That's a mystery. Well, the show's a conduit, and I'm proud of it in that regard, because there's really nothing else like it in terms of day-to-day as a touchstone to the sport, and as what I call it as a news magazine, a way for serious players, stakeholders, people that are interested in getting involved in the game. It's really the only thing I think that provides a direct contact for members of the industry, to reach out to a certain constituency that's very eager to hear from them.
No, I agree. I mean, when I would go, especially when I was doing the Fox shows and I traveled on racetracks, more people would stop me and not say, "Oh, I watch you on the NYRA feed" and stuff. More people would stop me and say, "I listen to you on Steve Bick's show every week," than anything else. It's amazing how many people listen to that show, and it does. It brings people into the game and allows them to talk to people that are involved in the game, trainers, riders, owners, and such. And also, through your website, I think you've brought a lot of people into handicapping and understanding how to play, and you've brought the masses to racing in a way that very few people have.
Well, that's a very nice compliment, and I think what I have tried to do with the show is communicate to people that you don't have to be embarrassed to be involved in racing. There's this sentiment out there that we should be ashamed that we bet on horses, and that we breed and buy and sell horses, and that our lives are dedicated on the racetrack to their care and maintenance and competing with them. And it's just preposterous. And you want people to feel good about the game and not let some of the white noise that wants to embarrass and humiliate the industry. I won't buy into that, and none of it should. No.
And that doesn't mean that there aren't issues the industry needs to address and should be addressing, but this constant negativity. The great thing about Saratoga is the negativity just goes away when we come to Saratoga, right? Doesn't mean there aren't serious issues, you can talk about it, but Saratoga accentuates the positive.
And it's not limited to Saratoga, because if you were to stop and not just England, it's everywhere, and it's at the small tracks. Go to Oaklawn in the spring. Go in February, and it's 43 degrees, and they've got 17,000 people thronging the place.
How'd they slip you into Oaklawn?
That was
must have run you into a cloak of darkness in town.
Yes, but I'm going to go back. It was spectacular. It was everything.
You were in this place?
I hit the horse.
Yeah, how was Oaklawn? I've never been.
It's spectacular. I will say one thing. Is anybody from Hot Springs?
Anybody that will admit it?
Nobody from Hot Springs? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because they say, the funny thing about Hot Springs is they say, oh, it's the Saratoga of the Ozarks. No. It's sort of the Fort Edward of the Ozarks with the racetrack.
Now, you're no longer welcome to Fort Edward. Tina, that's out. No Fort Edward.
It's a very, I loved it, but I'll say this, it won't necessarily be for everybody. It is very cool, and it's like Saratoga was. It's in the throes of rebuilding itself. It was as a resort town. It paralleled Saratoga. It had all the same things, all the gaming. It had Al Capone and the Ohio Club. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a big-time gambling center and a hotbed.
Now I want to go.
Oh, you'd enjoy it, but it's a town that, for those, and you can appreciate this growing up here. For those of you that remember when this town was a little dog-eared and a little bit threadbare.
When I first met Andy Byer, 1975.
Right?
It did not look as nice as it does right now.
Well, exactly.
It had potential.
That's it. And when I was at Colgate and we'd come here to chase Skidmore girls, late 70s, early, not bad.
How did it go for them?
But this town was not nearly what it is today, and Oaklawn is a lot like Saratoga was 40 years ago. It's trying to build itself back up, and I'm sure it'll succeed. It's well worth the trip, but I mean, everywhere I go, and of course Santa Anita and Fairgrounds, was it Fairgrounds a week this spring? I hadn't been there in forever.
You're everywhere. I want to be you.
And you would be just as they would clamor for an Andy Serling.
You're far nicer than I am.
All right, that's fair.
I gotta take a break. We'll be back with Steve. Stay with us, we come right back. After Post Live is brought to you by NYRA Events. Join NYRA. We come back, I'm joined by my friend Steve Bick, at the Post, up from At the Races. A lot of acts going on. Sorry, it's not easy to remember. And we want to thank everybody. It's the last show, and we're so happy that so many people turned out for such a nice night here in Saratoga for a big weekend. Are you looking forward to it? You're going to Florida. When are you going to Florida? Steve's going away.
This is
Don't go.
I have no choice.
I'll give you a doctor's note.
There's only so many of these functions. Exactly. There's only so many of these kinds of functions you can put off from this, but
endless in my life.
Yes, but I have to go. My cousin Debbie, her second son, bar mitzvah on
She should have that second kid. Would have to go.
The last one was also on Labor Day 2 years ago. And I have to.
Why? Because she keeps having them on Labor Day?
Well, this is the last opportunity, and my father is sick, so I gotta go.
So when are you going?
We're gonna go first thing Saturday morning and be back on Sunday.
Will you be at the races Sunday?
I think we got back to that. But Monday for closing day, we'll do one more show. We're doing tomorrow's show from Saratoga, and we'll do the Monday closing day show.
Labor Day show, that's her.
Absolutely.
You don't take off Labor Day?
No, I don't take off any deal. I take off 5 days right at the beginning of, or the end of June, and 5 days between Christmas and New Year.
And you take off no time when Saratoga's not?
There has been the occasional year where I've taken maybe 2 days, like maybe the Wednesday, Thursday, or the Tuesday, Wednesday, to Tina's chagrin. But
You just go back to work. She doesn't care about it.
she's a school teacher in Salem, yeah. So she's got her kids.
So let's talk about horse racing and where you see it going. I mean, you're somebody who's ever optimistic, more optimistic than anyone I know, and you've introduced a lot of people to the game through ownership. So how's the game? How's the game doing?
I had this discussion earlier today, actually, and to me, there are so many signs that are positive that anybody that is going out of their way to deny them and to claim that the game is in some death throw they're just making things up. There's just too many positives. We're having one meet after another where we're setting handle records. Your problem that everybody was so concerned about with the crops, the foal crop pendulum is coming back the other direction. It's a simple arithmetic, supply and demand. More mares are going back into service. The problems that people were concerned about in terms of field size, that's been addressed in terms of better management from the racing offices. There's a move afoot to do more interactive scheduling between racetracks, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic and in the Northeast, to better basically reduce some of the overlap. I completely disagree with this notion that we're supposed to contract. Oh, we should get rid of the C tracks. Really? We should stop having racing in places like St. Louis, Missouri, and Boston, Massachusetts.
You need those tracks so people can go. So people in Chicago, Arlington Park, and Boston.
Exactly.
We have great fans in Boston. We have so many fans in New England and Saratoga. Tons of Boston fans.
You cannot close off the game in portions of the country and expect that people are somehow via osmosis going to get interested in the sport. I mean, the reality is if people go even to these 3 weekends at Suffolk, you've got 2 more days at Suffolk, Saturday and Sunday, and even if they go and that's their introduction. The first time I came here, the first time I went to Aqueduct, my grandfather brought me in the early 70s. I wasn't going to distinguish Riva Ridge from a nickel claimer.
I saw Green Gambados win in Aqueduct the first time I went with my grandmother in 1974. It was incredible. I agree. I mean, you have to introduce people to racing somehow. And also, the racing ecosystem. I mean, you can't... People say, tracks need to close. And I understand that conceptually, but you don't just go out and say, we're going to breed American Pharaoh, Zenyatta, Rachel Alexandra, and Erica this year. You've got to breed an awful lot of horses to get the good horses. And if tracks start closing, and it's a big discussion, but the ecosystem collapses, because if there aren't enough tracks running, the breeding industry will collapse. And you won't be able to breed good horses if you can't breed ultimately bad horses.
Now, and on that same topic, this is a big industry. This is not some cottage, little backroom industry. Well, but this is a vast industry that has got layers and layers of infrastructure that has jobs tied to it that are vital. It's also a green industry that grows product to feed the horses. It is all renewable. I frequently say on the show, I have yet to drive past any slot machine yearlings. I don't see any yearling slot machines bounding around in fields.
Thank God.
It's just silly. The biggest problem we face is the proximity to agrarian life in this country. We're just getting further away, and people are just less familiar with farm animals and with basically the agricultural lifestyle. That's a big challenge.
And I also think just the whole nature of the game and what you see people here. You're not going to have a group of people coming here for the lottery. And it's because horse racing is an infinitely entertaining and interesting game that brings people out and personalities. It creates excitement. It's thrilling, and that doesn't happen through the lottery and through slot machines. And to me, in Saratoga, reminds you of why we love the game.
Well, and it's an intellectual pursuit. It's the thinking man's gambling game. Something that Andy and Steve, Chris, anybody that approaches the game in that regard, and it's unendingly satisfying when you figure out something that pays you, and there's no better feeling of any endeavor you can imagine as a pastime.
We're almost out of time. We have a quick break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. We come right back. Steve Pick, at the Post Wire. I want to thank my guests tonight, NYRA, Steve.
And before we break, a big thank you to Andy for not just these Thursdays, which have become an institution in Saratoga, but for the work he puts in that tries to make all of us better players and enjoy the New York circuit as best. There's nobody that's ever done what he does.
Thank you. You're all too kind. Steve is too kind. All of my guests, if I really did my job, I would have written them all down and thanked them all.